This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have my friend John Merrill with us. John is the newly elected Secretary of State of Alabama from Tuscaloosa, and now a resident of Montgomery. John, good to have you on the show.
Steve, always good to be with you, friend.
We had old John on when he first ran, y'all, and when he first started running, and then after he won the Republican nomination, now he's actually the Secretary of State of Alabama, and he's jumped into the job, doing an excellent job. And John, I got to say this. I went to these receptions, you know, when people get sworn in.
Yes, sir.
Now, I know the other 5 constitutional officers, Bentley and Kay Ivey and Luther Strange and John McMillan and Young Boozer were going for their second term, so it wasn't a new thing. But your reception at the State Archives building was one of the best attended receptions I've ever seen. And I've got a column coming about that. It looked like one of the old Wallace receptions.
Thank you, Steve.
It had people come all over the state. But you know what? You built a statewide organization. I don't think the other constitutional officers have that kind of organization because you had to.
Well, we did. We had to in order for us to be successful and to be able to reach the people that we needed to reach at the ground level with a grassroots effort that we had to have in order to be successful. That's what we had to do.
It's hard to raise money in the Secretary of State.
Yes, sir.
You did pretty well, but the job, you can't do a lot of favors for people.
Well, if people are giving you money, it's because they believe in you and they believe in what you're trying to do at that particular office, because there's no other reason to contribute.
John, if I ever told you this story, forgive me for telling those stories. You know, the only person I ever saw that worked as hard and got an organization was 30 years ago. Don Siegman ran for Secretary of State as a young man. And I'll tell you a funny story about, if I've already told you, stop me. But, you know, Siegman was a liberal. Now, you're conservative, but most people in politics now are conservative, moderate conservative. But old Siegman and Bill Baxley, some of those guys were progressive liberals. And they actually worshiped Big Jim Folsom.
Right.
Because Big Jim was really a liberal. I mean, for you think about it, he was liberal on all kind of progressive issues. He was liberal on the race issue. I mean, that's one of the reasons people say beat him rather than getting TV drunk. But they had adored him, and Siegman had never met old Big Jim. And Big Jim in his later years, and you probably know this from having campaigned all over the state like you did, there's a real popular truck stop up there on Coleman on I-65 North, and Big Jim hung out up there all night long drinking coffee. And Siegman had been like you, campaigned all over the state and built an organization. And he idolized Big Jim, and he saw him over there and says, God, that's Big Jim Folsom over there. He went over there and spoke to him, and he says, Governor, I'm Don Siegman. I'm running for Secretary of State, and I can sit down and visit with you. And Big Jim said, sure, boy, sit down and talk to me. Tell me more about yourself. Well, Governor, he like you. He said, I went to University of Alabama. I was president of the SGA. Then after I was president of the SGA, I went to Georgetown Law School. Then I went to Oxford, England to school. After that, Governor Folsom, and now I'm chairman of the Democratic Party and running for Secretary of State. And Big Jim said, well, that's interesting, boy. You asked for my advice? And he said, yeah, Governor, I want your advice. Big Jim said, I'll give you 3 pieces of advice. First of all, I believe I'd change that name. Siegman ain't something people in Aniana want to hear. They want to hear Smith. They believe somebody named Smith. Second of all, you know, I believe I'd tell folks I went to Oxford High School, not Oxford, England. And third, don't you know you can't steal no money in that job? Busto Siegman was idealistic bubble, but you can't steal no money in the Secretary of State.
Right.
One good thing about it, you won't get any problem with the Ethics Commission.
That's right.
Because you can't steal no money in the Secretary of State. Tell our viewers, kind of, if you will, what all the Secretary of State's job? It ain't no easy job.
Well, there are over.
I mean, you got a real job.
No doubt about it, Steve. And there are over 1,000 prescribed duties for the Secretary of State according to the Code and the Constitution. And of course, we chose in our campaign to concentrate on 3 independent areas, but primarily what we've concentrated on are the elections issues, campaign practices, fair campaign practice reports, those issues. but the integrity and credibility of the elections process primarily. Secondarily, the area of business and corporations, licensing and trademarking in the business services area, and making sure that that part of the office is as efficient and as effective as it can possibly be. And then third, in the area of international adoptions, which also comes under business services, but it affects everyday families in their lives every day as they try to bring someone into their family to make their family whole. So those are the things that we've tried to concentrate on. And of course, we want to make sure that when people call our office at 334-242-7200 that we're doing everything we can to help them meet their needs, to make sure that government is out of their way, but when they need our services, to provide them in a timely fashion.
John, you know, this was Jim Bennett one time. Jim, of course, served probably longer than anybody has as Secretary of State in the state's history. He said it's so interesting when you tell people you're Secretary of State, they think you're globetrotting or going to Egypt or the Middle East.
Right.
Do people still think that when you go to...
Well, they do, but it's odd that you mention that because in the month of April, I will be going to Taiwan for a week, and in the month of May and June, I'll be going to China for a week. And both of those trips at the invitation of those countries to come over for a geopolitical, socioeconomic trip that will help us explore the things that are going on in that area and bring those thoughts and ideas back to Alabama. But yes, sir, it is amazing what people think about the office just because of the title.
If you're speaking to the Rotary Club in Jasper, what do they think you do as Secretary of State? Rotary Club probably knows, don't
yeah,
they?
the ones that are in Rotary, the Kiwanis clubs, they typically know. But if you're talking to just a group of concerned citizens that may attend a church in a certain part of the state, they're not necessarily informed on all the duties of the 53rd Secretary of State. So I try to share a little bit about, like I did with you when I was introducing the office.
The second thing about incorporations, there has been a real delay in the Secretary of State's office in doing that.
Steve, when we first started running, it would take you 4 months to get your paperwork processed. But we've got it down to less than a month now, and we are working on getting it in the same day because that's what our business people want, that's what our attorneys want, that's what the customer wants. And in the 21st century, we ought to be able to figure out a way to get that done. Now, some of that's going to require codification changes. So we have legislation right now that we're carrying in the Senate and ultimately in the House before it passes that will allow us to streamline that process to meet the needs of our constituents throughout the state of Alabama and those that we do business with that are from other states in the Union.
So you're going to get it streamlined for one day probably, but you're going to need some paperwork.
Yes, sir.
John, one thing people don't realize is that you served 2 terms in the legislature.
Well,
so you know novice of state government.
Yeah, I was honored to have the privilege to represent Tuscaloosa County in the legislature, and now to have the privilege to serve as Alabama Secretary of State is beyond my wildest dreams.
John, when you first started running, you and I talked politics off and on. I have always thought and followed this, that Alabama has the most pronounced friends and neighbors politics of any state in America. If you're from a certain area of the state, you tend to do well. Then if you don't do well, it's a bad reflection on you. But you really have 3 home counties if you think about it. You were born and raised in Cleveland County.
Yes, sir.
Where your daddy was probate judge.
Yes,
and by the
sir.
way, he swore you in.
Yes, sir, he did.
I saw it. I was doing television there, and the other stations didn't know. I said, that's his daddy. His daddy was probate judge up there when they were swearing you in. And but your great uncle was Pelham Merrill, who was on the state Supreme Court for a long time.
24 years.
That was up there from that area of the state, and so you had that as a hometown. Then you went off to school at Tuscaloosa and stayed there for your business and professional career.
Yes, sir.
And your wife's from Franklin County around Red Bay.
Phil Campbell.
Phil Campbell,
yes,
yeah.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So well, tell me how you did in those counties. You did better than the rest of the state, didn't you?
We did extraordinarily well. We got 91% of the vote in Cleveland County, more than 70% of the vote in Franklin County, and almost 70% of the vote in Tuscaloosa County. So I was excited about that, and knowing that the people who know me best came out the hardest and the strongest for us, and that's the reason why we were so successful statewide.
That is good. That speaks 91%.
Yes, sir.
And that was against. Was that in the general or the primary?
Well, actually, in the runoff, we got 91% of the vote in the runoff.
Is that
yes,
right?
sir. And right at 90% in the general elections. As a matter of fact, my dad, as he got the returns, he asked the sheriff to bring them by, and the sheriff brought them by the next day. And he was looking at the boxes, and the first 2 boxes that he looked at, I got 100% of the votes that were cast. One of them was like 52 votes, the other one was 41 votes, and he started crying. He couldn't read the rest of it, and he told my mother, he said, "We're moving to Edwardsville."
Is that where they were?
That was from, yes, sir, from
What did have
Edwardsville.
without a rural box in Edwardsville?
No, it was because, you know, they live in Heflin, but that's where it had happened, and so Dad was so excited about that, and it really meant a lot to
John,
him.
talking about that, I've got, as you know, a little book coming out called Alabama Political Stories.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
I've got one in there about old Bill Baxley. Baxley, talking about him, he was kind of a progressive. But you know, Baxley was elected Attorney General when he was 28 or 29 years old. Yes,
sir.
Youngest in the history of the country. And he graduated from Alabama Law School at 22 years old, and Dothan High School. He had a photograph, remember, but you think you're 28 years old, he's a bachelor. Baxley wasn't far from fraternity beer drinking days.
Yes, sir.
And so when he got ready to run for Attorney General, some of the old heads grabbed old Baxley aside and said, "Baxley, we know you like to drink Schlitz beer, and we know you like to have a good time, but you got to really not be out there doing that while you're campaigning for Attorney General. You got to not drink at all." And Baxley said he had done that the whole time during the campaign. It was about 3 days out for election. He was campaigning in Baldwin County. Before Baldwin was a bedroom Republican county is now. But he got into a place out in the country, had a big old beer joint. And he got in there and got with those guys and stayed all night drinking beer with those old guys, and about 100 old beer drinking guys in Baldwin County. And he won the election just by that much thin against McDonald Gallion. And he got to looking at the vote. He said, "I'm going to look and see how I did in certain boxes of the state." And he got that but the book out, looked at the returns, which you probably like to do being a good politician. And he looked in Baldwin County, and sure enough, the whole county going about like the rest of the state. But it was one box today, got 90% in that box. He drank beer with those guys.
They got to know him.
I know. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off that story. That's the kind of stuff's in that book.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, he said he got more than that. But now one thing, too, about your career in politics, that thing about running statewide and not really running for a secondary office, you don't raise the kind of money you do for governor. You build an organization, and you get to know people. I was people all over the state, and taking pictures and everything. And I bet that was gratifying, wasn't it?
Well, it meant a lot to Cindy and me and our entire family. Our son actually had to leave that day to go to Los Angeles for an event with his schooling. He's a graduate student at the University of South Florida. He's getting his MBA and his Master's in Sport and Entertainment Management. He was leaving right after the inauguration that day, so he got to experience a little bit of it in the afternoon, but not much. But our daughter, who's had the opportunity to serve 2 congressional internships, was there with us, and she had a great time with other friends of hers who were able to come and enjoy us. But we just had a tremendous experience, Steve, having so many members of our family and our friends that came to join us that day.
You know, I saw a lot of legislators. You know, we had Mike Jones, man, Luge on the show. I didn't realize he and I were sitting here talking that y'all were best friends. But that happens when you get, he said y'all happened to get thrown together your freshman year. Tell me how that happened.
Well, I tell you, it was so unique. And
even
Mike,
orientation.
Yes, and Mike is one of the best friends that I have in the whole world, and definitely the very best friend in Montgomery. When we were in the special session in December 2010, our seats were by each other. And the reason that happened the way that it did, when we got down to the special session in December 2010, they told us to sit where our predecessor had sat. And so I sat in the seat that Gerald Allen had occupied, and Mike was replacing Seth Hammett as the speaker. Well, obviously, he's not going to sit in the speaker's chair, so he had to sit in the speaker's chair, who was Mike Hubbard. And Mike Hubbard and Gerald Allen had sat by each other. So instead of sitting in the seat that was the one that served him, he sat in the speaker's chair. So we got to sit by each other for that 2-week period of time. And then his office was on a different floor than mine for that first year, but the second year we were moved, and I requested that Mike be moved too. And so the building authority allowed him to move, and so our offices were next to each other on the 4th floor. And what we did, Steve, we knew the state didn't have any money, and nobody had occupied these offices in several years. So Mike and I came down here in December of 11. We tore out all the carpet from our office. We laid the carpet ourselves. We painted the offices ourselves with paint and carpet that we had purchased, and we prepared everything. My sister and her daughters came over and helped us, and we prepared all of that, and we stayed by each other for the next 3 years. And every night after the receptions, we're up there working till all hours of the evening, and reading bills and talking about things that are important to us and our families. And so we sat by each other in the chamber on our regular assigned seats, which are down to the right of the speaker, and just got to be very close. He's spent the night in my home. I've been in his home, and we're very close.
Well, you make best friends being in the legislature.
Yes, sir.
Sure do. You know, talking about, I just thought about Tuscaloosa. You know, Tim Parker sat by me for a while.
Yes, sir. He's a good man.
And I think Bentley took his seat.
He did.
Tim Parker was there for 2 or 3 terms with me.
3 terms.
3 terms with me,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Was that you weren't in that seat though? That was
No, sir. Bill Poole's in that seat now. Yes, sir.
That's right. But I like old Parker. I saw him at a Tuscaloosa ball game this last year. You know, one thing about Tuscaloosa, though, and I've said this, I told the governor this, and I've written about this. If you think about it, I don't think any time in history have we had the senior U.S. Senator, Richard Shelby, the governor, Robert Bentley, the Secretary of State, John Merrill, a couple of judges, the chairman of Ways and Means Education,
Yes,
Bill
sir.
Poole, you know, 3 senators, and you got 2 of the strongest congressmen.
Yes, sir.
Y'all drew a district. You got Adderholt and Sewell in your district.
Right.
You know, I don't know if I said the title of my column was y'all move to the capital, Tuscaloosa.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
sent you a little text about it, I think.
Yes, sir. You did. You did. Yes, sir.
John, tell something you're working on now that I think jumping right into your job as Secretary of State. Tell our viewers about this project you're working on with Luther Strange.
Well, thank you for asking me about it. We are so excited about the Alabama Election Fairness Project. What this does, Steve, is it gives the citizens in our state who are concerned about fair elections, who are concerned about fair campaign practices and making sure that people follow the laws that are in place, it gives them an avenue to share their concerns if they see something that's going on that's inappropriate or that does not offer the kind of accountability that they would expect. So they can go online to alabamavotes.gov or sos.alabama.gov, fill out a form that would initiate an investigation about elections, about campaigning, about fair campaign practice reports, campaign financing, any of those things. When we have exhausted our options in investigating that incident as far as we possibly can, we turn it over to the Secretary of Law Enforcement, Spencer Collier, and his team at ALEA.
So 3 of y'all.
Yes, sir. And then when ALEA takes it and they do a full-scale investigation, which could involve subpoenas, could involve court orders, whatever they need to make sure that everything is taken care of, when they've conducted a full-scale investigation, they'll take all of their information, if it's warranted, they'll put it in a box, and they'll put a bow on it, and they'll take that and they'll present it to the Attorney General or the local district attorney, where they will determine if it needs to be presented to the grand jury for indictment, and then they will prosecute the case.
John, the good thing about this too is what y'all are doing is you're not out trying to get people. You're out, you may just ferret out things. Say, look, you filled your form out wrong.
Yes, sir.
You know, you don't, you're not supposed to give, like I remember a year, 2 or 3 years ago, for example, I have some campaign money left over from my legislative days, and I fill out a form on it every year. And in the old days, you could give that money to another candidate
Right.
under the old law. I didn't know the law had changed. Being a columnist, you'd think I know that. And I had a boy running for Mayor of Troy, and I gave him a contribution out of that campaign thing. And someone told me, said, that you're not really supposed to do that anymore.
Right.
You know, and so, but I wasn't trying to break the law.
Sure.
I
Sure.
wouldn't have been convicted of that. But y'all would have called me up and said,
Right.
Steve, you can't give to the boy running for Mayor of Troy.
Right.
You know, You know, that's what y'all, so you're not out trying to get people.
No, sir. We just want to make sure that people are following the law.
They might add the figures up wrong.
That's correct.
They might say, well, look, this is just not done properly.
Whatever it happens to be. And we want to make sure that they're in compliance and that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
But if you find somebody doing a pack wrong,
yes, sir.
They're really trying to funnel money, not
Yes,
just
sir.
some benign, ignorant person like me doing something they don't know what it means. But I guess you can still give to churches and stuff, can't you?
You can, but there's a particular distribution pattern that people can spend their campaign resources, and that's delineated in the law. So there's really no question about what could or should be done with those resources. You just need to follow the law and dispensation.
But you know, a lot of people don't know the law.
Yes, sir.
Especially first-time candidates. I've had people before tell me, John, you know, I said, you think about somebody, unless they have been around politics like you and me, and know if someone wants to run for just a basic office like mayor or county commissioner or special legislature, there's all kind of rules and regulations and forms you got to fill out.
That's right.
That people don't realize.
Yes, sir.
You know, you just can't go down to, like in the old days, I'm going to run for the legislature. Well, you got to fill out a form. You got to file it with the Secretary of State. You got to file with the probate judge in your county. It's a complicated thing.
It is, and there are penalties when you don't do it correctly, and you need to make sure that you're complying with the law.
Y'all make things accessible to people that are running for office.
Yes, sir.
That are trying to do the right thing.
Yes, sir.
Do y'all send out some kind of form letter to people when they qualify, saying y'all need to start, you need to do this, this, and this?
Well, we have that information available to them. We have had booklets before that are prepared that are available to candidates or potential candidates so that it can answer their questions. We also have that information online.
John, what about how many employees you got over there now?
Almost 50.
50. Has all this budget crunch cut down the Secretary of State staff?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that, because our outstanding chairman of the Senate General Fund Committee, Arthur Orr, has just asked us and all state agencies to provide him with a way that we would absorb a 15% and a 30% cut in the general fund budget if it was necessary. And so it helps you evaluate your priorities when you're asked to make that kind of consideration and then to present something to him for his consideration. And that's what we're in the process of doing now. That has to be turned in by tomorrow, and we're preparing it to, well, it's being turned in this afternoon.
John, is every state agency, they have to go before the Ways and Means Committee in general?
Well, and I don't know that he's going to ask for a full-scale presentation, but he asked that certain questions be answered. And of course, we prepared an extensive document delineating exactly what we would do if we had a 15% cut or a 30% cut. Not that he's expecting that. He just wanted to know what it would mean for us.
It may happen, though.
And it may, and you don't ever know. So you better be prepared, and you better know what you're doing, and you better know your budget front and back.
Like, for example, how many people does the treasurer have over there?
Well, I'm not sure
Ballpark.
exactly what he's got. I think there's 4 that actually work in the office where Young is. In the auditor's office, there's 3 that work in there. But see, the auditor and the treasurer have other employees that, just like we do, that are not physically located in their office in the Capitol complex.
What in the world, as a former legislator, where would Medicaid and prisons start if they had to cut 30% off their budget?
Absolutely no
idea. Have you ever thought about that? Or
Yes,
public
sir.
health?
Yes, sir.
What would Dr. Williamson have to do, you think? Have you thought about that?
It'd be dramatic. There's no telling what would happen.
You know, I have sort of taken up for Dr. Bentley in this situation because he's had to, you know, he's not a tax and spend liberal, but sometimes you've kicked the can down the road long enough.
Yes, sir.
And what's telling is you see the chairman of the Ways and Means and F&T, Arthur Orr and Steve Klaus, saying things that need to be done differently. One other thing I was thinking about, you know, and this didn't resonate me during the campaign, but you were sitting on a swing in your television ad, and one of the best ads. This lady was coming out very warmly for you. I don't know if she's in Tuscaloosa or where she was from, in your television ad. Tell our viewers exactly the role that the Secretary of State plays. Is it adopting just foreign children?
Yes, sir. International. Domestic adoptions are handled through the probate offices in each one of the 67 counties, but international adoptions have to go through, be validated and authenticated through the Office of the Secretary of State. And we were delighted when that family elected to participate in a commercial for us. I can't tell you what it meant to me to be able to work with that family to make sure that Emma was able to come and to join them, because they are just a tremendous group of people, Sharon and DJ Allen, and they're
They go to your church in Tuscaloosa?
No, sir. I actually didn't even know Sharon when she called me out of the blue on July the 4th, 2012.
You had called you as a legislator?
Yes, sir, and said, could I find a way to help?
She's from Tuscaloosa?
She's actually from Northport.
Did you have Northport in your district?
I did not. Didn't even have Northport in my district, but she knew that I was someone that had helped other people, and that's the reason she reached out to me. And she actually sent her email to 10 elected officials requesting assistance, and she told me that I was the only person that responded. But we were able to help them, and we were able to get Emma to come from China to live with DJ and Sharon, and that's one of my greatest accomplishments as a legislator, even though it's not something that people will look back in the books and say, well, he passed that law for this purpose, or he did, but I helped to make a family whole.
John, then ironic you'd be doing that as Secretary of State.
Yes, sir.
You didn't know that when you did it at the time. John, what about, one thing I've always thought about is to me, one of the most interesting things would be to run statewide like you did and see the entire state and meet people in every county and build your organization. You realize what a beautiful state it is, don't you?
Absolutely, my friend.
The people are good people and friendly.
Yes, sir. And that's one of the things that Cindy is so excited about, in being able to retire and come join me full time. So whenever we travel, we can travel together, and we're very excited about that.
Is she going to retire pretty soon?
Yes, sir. June the 30th, she's retiring as a principal in the Tuscaloosa County school system after almost 30 years of experience.
And she's going to come down and live here in Tuscaloosa, Montgomery?
Yes, sir, in Montgomery. But, having been to all 67 counties twice during the campaign was something that has not been done in years, if it's ever been done, the way that I did it. And she would hear me talk about experiences that I had had and people that I had met and places that I had been and things I had seen. And she wants to see them, and she's making a list of places that we're going to go together and see those things.
If I were going to campaign statewide and I was going to do it during the year, I'd have to make sure I was heading to northeast Alabama in the fall.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is a pretty part of Alabama.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't you say that?
Well, and the first time that she had been to that high point in DeKalb County was when we went on July the 14th, July 13th and 14th, right before the runoff election, where we were able to go up there and experience some of that time together. And she had known of my love for DeKalb County, Mentone, Fort Payne, Geraldine, Fife, Silas, all of that area up there, Valley Head, that has meant so much to me over the years. And one of the things that has meant so much about getting around like that, Steve, is it means a lot to people when you go to their communities and you know where they live and you know what it's like for them in Rainsville or wherever you happen to be, and people, they don't forget that.
They don't. Well, John, time's up. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be with us, and we'll have you back on again pretty soon.
Thank you, friend. It's always good to be with you.
Thank you. We thank you viewers for watching Alabama Politics. Hope you tune in again next week and join us. Our guest tonight has been John Merrill, Secretary of State of Alabama. Thank you again.